convinced at all. They've seen a similar amalgamation of Macau. So cracking down on a Hong Kong magnate is not surprising as long as he doesn't agree or is seen to be opposing the central government out of Beijing. This is par for the course.
And you know, as US, UK, and United Nations have all condemned this, but does it really make any difference for China and Hong Kong about this Jimmy Lai's case?
I'm afraid not. China looks to its own internal requirements first and foremost. And the UN is really much reduced in influence, and people don't take it very seriously right now. As far as the UK goes, the UK is, was a past lessee of Hong Kong, but today it neither has the stature nor the clout with China to make any difference whatsoever.
And last but not least, yesterday we saw Taiwan being cautious about this, right? Why do you think that Taiwan is seeing this as a warning for them?
Well, Taiwan is always under threat under the One China policy. While the threat is kept alive very strongly by China, they have not as yet moved on Taiwan to try and force it to become part of the People's Republic. So, things are at a status quo, and yet they are not, in the sense that China often encircles Taiwan, threatens it, flies over it, blocks its maritime passages. And then when you have an incident like this in Hong Kong, it sends shivers down the political spine of Taiwan, because should this be attempted in Taiwan, what would happen to their fragile independence, if you like? It's not absolute independence, they don't want it, or they haven't asked for it, but their fragile autonomy, which has worked very well so far.
Yes, indeed. With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Mukherjee for joining us and sharing that insight with us on News 6 World. Thank you very much. We have a breaking news coming in from Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused some political factions of using the Jeffrey Epstein's case to target their rivals. In an interview, Lavrov has stated that these political groups are attempting to create discomfort in countries they oppose. He has pointed out that in the US, both the Republican and Democratic parties are being affected, while in Europe, some diplomatic figures have already resigned. Lavrov specifically mentioned about Peter Mandelson and said that he was publicly humiliated and resigned with pride after the Epstein scandal surfaced. We have another breaking news coming in. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that the United States is ready to help resolve the Ukrainian conflict by addressing its root causes. Lavrov has emphasized that the U.S. is willing to contribute to a settlement, ensuring Ukraine does not join NATO, and that the territorial issue is resolved based on current realities and the will of the people in those areas. He has also referenced a statement by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio highlighting the importance of mutually beneficial projects between Moscow and Washington. Lavrov has expressed concerns over the potential for escalation if tensions rise further. Now we move on to Ethiopia. The UN's Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has urgently called for de-escalation in Ethiopia's Tigray region, warning that the risk of further conflict is growing. Renewed fighting erupted between the Tigray Defense Forces and federal troops after tensions rose over disputed areas like Tiselementi and Alamata. The TDF's recent movements have raised fears of a full-scale return to the devastating civil war that ended in 2022. In response, the Ethiopian government has launched airstrikes and cancelled flights to the region. The situation remains volatile, and international bodies are concerned that this flare-up could ignite a broader regional conflict once again. The UN has called for immediate action to prevent the fragile peace from completely unraveling. Furthermore, diplomatic efforts are being intensified to prevent the collapse of the Pretoria Agreement and avoid a return to full-scale war in northern Ethiopia. Let's listen in.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, calls on all parties to take urgent steps towards de-escalation amid the precarious situation in the Tigray region. Recent fighting between the Ethiopian army and regional forces has highlighted the risk of a deepening human rights crisis in the north of the country. The situation remains highly volatile, and we fear that it will deteriorate, worsening the region's already precarious human rights and humanitarian situation.
Now we move on to Philippines. Philippines President Ferdinando Marcos Jr. has avoided impeachment after a decisive vote in the House of Representatives. In a largely expected outcome, his allies voted overwhelmingly to dismiss the complaints against him, the complaints accusing Marcos of betraying the public trust, graft corruption, and violating the Constitution were dismissed after the House Justice Committee found them lacking in substance. The vote saw 284 members voting to dismiss, while only 8 voted for impeachment and 4 abstained. A constitutional rule now blocks further impeachment complaints against Marcos until next year. Impeachment efforts are now shifting towards Vice President Sara Duterte, who is facing another round of complaints after surviving a similar challenge last year. Marcos is the second president in Philippines history to face impeachment following Joseph Estrada, whose trial was aborted in 2001. Now, last but not least, we move on to tech news. SoftBank is expected to report a profit from its investment in OpenAI when it shares its quarterly results. However, there are concerns about how SoftBank will fund its growing AI investment, especially since OpenAI is still facing loss. SoftBank has invested over $30 billion in OpenAI in 2025 and is considering more investments. This has led to concerns about the company's financial risk, as SoftBank is now closely tied to OpenAI's future. To fund this, SoftBank has sold some of its assets and taken on more debt. Now we have a breaking news coming in from Iran. Iran has accused Israel of using the global scandal surrounding Jeffrey Epstein as a geopolitical tool to advance its own interests. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghei has described the case as more than just a criminal matter, suggesting it may be part of a broader project aimed at promoting the political goals of certain parties, particularly in Israel. Baghei has emphasized that the impact of Epstein's crimes has been felt worldwide, calling them crimes against humanity. Epstein was arrested in 2019. He was accused of trafficking underage girls, but died in prison before facing trial. Iran has accused Israel of using the global scandal surrounding Jeffrey Epstein as a geopolitical tool to advance its own interests. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghei has described the case as more than just a criminal matter, suggesting it may be part of a broader project aimed at promoting the political goals of certain parties, particularly Israel. Baghei has emphasized that the impact of Epstein's crimes has been felt worldwide, calling them crimes against humanity. While Epstein was arrested in 2019, he was accused of trafficking underage girls, but he died in prison before facing trial. Now we move on to another breaking coming in from France. French President Emmanuel Macron will be visiting India from February 17 to 19th. The Indian Foreign Ministry has confirmed the visit in a statement on Tuesday. Macron's trip is expected to strengthen ties between the two countries. Further details about the agenda are awaited. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news and updates from around the world.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Asuma Kataka. Today we examine a significant legal and political development in Hong Kong. Pro-democracy media entrepreneur Mr. Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to 20 years in prison under Hong Kong's national